Today, we're soaring into the heart-stopping saga of TACA Flight 110, a routine trip that spiraled into a breathtaking fight for survival. Imagine a state-of-the-art Boeing 737, both engines silenced mid-flight, cutting through a violent thunderstorm, with nothing but a thin ribbon of grass beside a canal as its last hope. This isn't just a tale of grit, it's a jaw-dropping miracle that transformed aviation forever. So, fasten your seatbelts, give that like button a tap if you're ready, and let's dive into one of the most legendary deadstick landings in history. It's May 24th, 1988. TACA Flight 110 is a scheduled international flight operated by TACA International Airlines, a Central American carrier based in El Salvador. The plane is a Boeing 737-300, practically fresh off the assembly line, with less than 2 months in service. Its tail number is November 75356. The flight starts in San Salvador, makes a stop in Belize City, and is now headed to New Orleans, Louisiana, a trip of about 875 nautical miles. On board are 38 passengers and a crew of 7, including Captain Carlos Dárdano, First Officer Dionisio Lopez, and an instructor pilot, Arturo Soler, who's along to monitor the new plane's performance. Everything is going smoothly as they climb over the Gulf of Mexico, but that's about to change. Captain Dárdano's no ordinary pilot. He's got over 13,000 hours of flight experience, but here's the kicker. He's flying with one eye. Back in 1985, during El Salvador's Civil War, he was shot in the head while on the ground, losing his left eye. Against all odds, he convinced the FAA he could still fly commercially. Talk about determination. Little did he know that grit was about to be tested in the skies over Louisiana. As Flight 110 begins its descent into New Orleans from 35,000 feet, the crew spots trouble ahead. Their weather radar lights up with green and yellow patches, light to moderate rain, but there are also these ominous red cells, signaling heavy precipitation. They're not panicked yet. They've got a state-of-the-art plane and years of experience. Dárdano decides to thread the needle, aiming to fly between two of those red cells. At 30,000 feet, they enter the clouds. As a precaution, they switch on continuous ignition and engine anti-ice, standard moves to keep the engines safe from rain or ice buildup. But what they don't know is they're flying into a monster of a thunderstorm. Suddenly, it's not just rain, it's torrential downpours and hail the size of golf balls hammering the plane. Inside the cabin, passengers hear the eerie thudding of hail against the fuselage. At 16,500 feet, disaster strikes. Both CFM56 turbofan engines, the heart of the 737, flame out. The cockpit goes dark as all electrical power cuts out. The plane's now a 60-ton glider, dropping silently through the storm.
Mayday, TACA 110. We lost an engine.
I understand you have lost an engine, is that correct?
Both engines, sir. Both engines.
Understand both engines.
I'm declaring an emergency here. I don't have any engines, okay? Any engines. We glide them down, okay?
I understand you're gliding down, TACA 110, roger.
I don't think that I will make it. So I guess we have to go down. We have to go down.
No engines, no thrust, just the sound of wind and hail. The thrust levers were already at idle for the descent, but now they're useless. Dárdano and Lopez don't freeze, though. They kick into gear. First, they start the APU as they pass 10,500 feet. That brings back electrical power and hydraulics, so they can still control the plane. Next, they try a windmill restart, using the rushing air to spin the engines back to life. No dice. The storm's too intense, and the engines won't catch. They switch to the standard restart procedure, using the APU to power the starters. The engines sputter back to life, a flicker of hope. But there's a catch. They won't go above idle power. Push the throttles any further, and the engines overheat, risking a fire. Dárdano makes the call, shut them down again. Meanwhile, in the cabin, the flight attendants, Myrna Rosales, Luis Castillo, Yvette Lovo, and Gloria Gutierrez, are prepping for the worst. They tell passengers to brace, remove sharp objects, and get ready for an emergency landing. First Officer Lopez calls Mayday to air traffic control. The nearest airport, New Orleans International, is too far. They're at 5,000 feet and sinking fast. Dárdano's scanning the ground for options. He spots the Gulf Intracoastal Waterway, a canal, and plans to ditch there. The crew preps for a water landing, briefing passengers on life vests. But then, at 1,000 feet, Lopez sees something else, a grassy levee next to the canal, near NASA's Michoud Assembly Facility. It's narrow, it's risky, but it's their best shot. This is where it gets insane. Dárdano lines up with the levee, using a side-slip maneuver. This is a maneuver normally only used on smaller aircraft. It involves using rudder and ailerons to lose altitude quickly. The flight attendants shout, "Brace, brace," a signal they're about to hit. At just the right moment, Dárdano levels out and touches down on this tiny strip of grass. The 737 skids to a stop, intact, with no major damage beyond some hail dents. Everyone's alive, 45 souls, from passengers to crew, with only a few minor bumps and bruises. Passenger July Mora, a travel agent from New Orleans, later said, "It was a very smooth landing. I thought we were at the airport. I was surprised to learn we'd landed on a levee. That's how good Dárdano was. But here's the wild part. They didn't just abandon the plane. After swapping out one engine on site and doing minor repairs, they towed it to Saturn Boulevard, a road that used to be a runway during World War II. With minimal fuel, that 737 took off again, using less than 1,000 feet of pavement, and flew back to New Orleans for full repairs. It later returned to service and flew until 2016 with Southwest Airlines. So, what went wrong? The National Transportation Safety Board dug in. Their conclusion? Both engines flamed out because they swallowed massive amounts of water and hail, way more than they were designed to handle. The storm's liquid water content was estimated at 25 to 30 grams per cubic meter. That's like 30 inches of rain per hour. The hail battered the engines, and the rain drowned them. The crew had tried to avoid the worst of it, but the radar couldn't show just how bad it really was. The investigation pointed fingers at the CFM56 engine's design and the FAA's certification standards. At the time, engines weren't tested for the kind of waterfall rates you'd see in a big thunderstorm. After TACA 110, CFM International stepped up. They added sensors for continuous ignition in heavy rain, tweaked the engine nose cone and fan blades to deflect hail better, and installed bleed doors to drain excess water. This incident literally made planes safer. Captain Dárdano called it a beautiful, beautiful landing, crediting his experience and a bit of luck. He kept flying for TACA, later becoming a chief pilot and retiring in 2023 after 49 years in the air. People compare this to Sully's Miracle on the Hudson, but TACA 110 was 20 years earlier. Dárdano was the original master of the deadstick landing. Both crews showed insane skill, but Dárdano did it with one eye and no checklist for dual-engine failure. That's next level. What's the takeaway? Aviation's full of close calls, but it's the human factor, skill, teamwork, cool heads, that turns disasters into miracles. TACA 110 didn't just survive. It changed how we build and fly planes. So, what do you think? Could you stay calm in that cockpit? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them.